Hello, welcome, or welcome back to those of you who were already at the AGM before this event. This panel will be in French. However, if you would like to have access to interpretation towards French, it is accessible. The Network for Circular Economy of Quebec is happy to open this session for the WCEF Studio in the context of the week of circular economy until April 18th. The goal of this panel is to present circular economy initiatives across the world. So we are really happy as the Quebec delegate, the RRECQ, to introduce you to our panelists today that will talk about roadmaps towards a circular economy in Quebec population. We can ask, what is a roadmap towards circular economies? It's just a matter of proposing a path towards a vision of circular economies that can also highlight the ways we can coordinate and organize around different milestones so that we can reach our goals and hopes. That's what we call a roadmap. In Quebec, we have several initiatives for roadmaps that are taking place at the moment, both at the government, municipalities, regions. So we are thrilled to welcome several panelists today that will talk about their own initiatives for roadmaps on circular economies in Quebec. And we are working on 3 goals with this panel. Firstly, to introduce to you the different approaches that are currently being built in matters of circular economy. Those we are working on. Some of them are starting up, others are more advanced, or some of them are still being implemented. Seeing as circular economy asks cohesion and collaboration between different stakeholders, it's important that these maps don't be talked about in silos. So today we want to talk about how can we enmesh different aspects of these different roadmaps? How can we better work together and coordinate, pass information along? We have people online and in person for this event, and so we hope we can have the time to talk about best practices while drawing up roadmaps. What are the mechanisms we can use to ensure a smooth transition and the implementation of the roadmap? We hope this conversation will be helpful to other stakeholders that would also like to eventually work on developing roadmaps for their own region. So that's the goal of our panel today. We'll play together for 1 hour. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists. So we have, some of them are online, some of them are with us in the room. So I'd like to start with Marlibel Ocha Miranda, which is a project manager for RRECQ, which is the Circular Economy Network of Quebec, and Emmanuel Reflet, which is a professor at HEC Montreal and co-holder of the and they will present RRECQ's participatory roadmap for Quebec society. We also have Natasha Beauchesne with us online. She's a commissary to the economy development and responsible for circular economy in Montreal, and they will present the Montreal roadmap in a few minutes. We also have Chalet Bernier, Director of the Environment for the Community Metropolitaine de Québec, who will talk about the process that just begun in the Community Metropolitaine of Quebec territory. We also have Vincent Lusignan, who's the General Manager for the Synergie Économique Laurentide, and they will talk about the regional circular economy strategy. So those are our 4 speakers today, and I'm so happy to have them with us today. We are very lucky to have you amongst us. So first, I'll invite the 4 speakers to briefly present their approach to the set scene. So in 1 minute, no more, so that they can describe a summary description of their roadmaps, and then we will have a short 30-minute conversation where we can exchange about our visions, considering what is currently being implemented and what is coming up for you. So for now, I'd like to introduce Marlibel to introduce their okay, just a moment. Show you my presentation. Can you see my PowerPoint? Yes, we can see it. Thank you. Maribel, can you please project it full screen? You just have to change from presenting to panelists or to webinar, sorry. There you go. Is that good? Yes, thank you. All right, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for having me here so that I can change the main aspects of the project entitled Roadmap for Quebec Society's Transition to a Circular Economy by 2050. A project piloted by the network since February 2023 and whose first three-stage phase runs until November this year. So to get right to the point, the goal of this project is to create an engaging process with forward-looking, systemic, and participatory approach that will enable us to identify a collective vision of a circular Quebec in 2050 and to map out at least one co-construction transition path to guide the actions of stakeholders on the ground. Ultimately, this project, motivated by the question of how to accelerate the transition to a more circular economy, strengthens our ability to imagine, co-create a desirable circular future in an uncertain context. To achieve this, we have chosen to apply the Chemin de Transition Foresight method developed at the University of Montreal. This method takes into account a diversity of academic knowledge, as well as knowledge from the field and even citizens, as has already been tested on 3 other environmental transition challenges at the provincial level. This approach was chosen because the transition to a different economic model requires change is so profound that it will take at least a generation to implement and will not be sustainable without an informed, debated, and above all, chosen transformation path. With this in mind, to arrive at the proposed roadmap, we follow 3 stages. Stage 1, called Possible Futures, which aims to open up our field of vision to explore what we can already anticipate as possible futures, focusing on research findings, trends, and unresolved issues in Quebec's circular economy in order to co-construct specialists a prospective diagnosis that enables us to develop future scenarios. Once these scenarios have been constructed, we've already done this stage by 2023. Once these scenarios have been constructed, they are transformed into short stories that represent possible evolutions and form the basis of stage 2, called Desirable Future. Through future exploration workshops open to the public, in which these stories are used as discussion triggers, desirable elements are identified to be concretized in a collective vision for 2050, also balances the points of tension to be anticipated in the circular future. This stage has been done in the months of the fall 2023. The third stage, entitled Pathways, again reserved for specialists who, in the collective vision themes, aims to co-construct 1 or 2 trajectories that will serve as links between the current situation and the desired future by identifying, linking, and positioning in time what we call milestones or intermediate results to be achieved between 2024 and 2050. These trajectories will help us identify where to start and guide us over time as the global and local context evolves. The project has already embarked on this third stage. Because of this participatory co-creation and expert meetings, to date, it has mobilized more than 330 people from different profiles and regions of Quebec and remains open to the participation of a larger number of stakeholders. Thank you very much, and I remain at your disposal for any further information. Thank you, Maribel, for this presentation. I will now hand it over to Natasha Beauchesne from Montreal. Hi, thank you. I'm delighted to be here with you to share with you Montreal's journey towards a circular economy. because to be able to make a real transition, contributions of cities is essential to act where the market and ecosystem alone cannot. So why roadmap, like other major metropolises, Montreal has set ambition targets in terms of ecological transition from carbon neutrality by 2050 to zero waste by 2030. To achieve this, the city is counting on a shift towards a greener, more inclusive economy, in particular by supporting circular economy. The circular economy has already been integrated into various planning exercises, including the Montreal 2030 Strategic Vision, the 2020-2030 Climate Plan, Montreal 2030 Waste Management Plan, and Economic Development Plan. So Montreal's approach to the circular economy can be divided into three main strands, forming a continual process with actions run in parallel. First, there's the whole notion of understanding where we're starting from, the obstacles, the challenges, stakeholders, etc. We want to take a stock of the situation. Second part is to mobilize the ecosystem because the circular economy cannot be achieved in silos. The third step is action. By drawing up a specific action plan to accelerate the deployment of circular economy in regions. So going back to where we're starting from, Montreal is aiming on strategic partnerships by setting up different relationships with key stakeholders in the ecosystem. So we have consulted more than 500 people, consulted with other cities, but also specific analyses to our context. So right now, we work with OECD, participations of the Pan-Canadian Circular Cities and Regions Initiative. We also work with Circle and MME to come up with analysis of flows and core priority sector values change, and an update to the mapping of circular economy initiatives in Montreal. So these exercises enabled us to identify the main obstacles and challenges, levers and opportunities, as well as the course of action. So we could deposit that in 2023 in consultation with the Montreal population. What's important with this roadmap is that it's the first planning document specific to the circular economy in Montreal. It's important to mention that the Ville of Montreal is mainly addressed to the business ecosystem because it is a economic development issue. And so we have 13 strategic priorities that have been identified at the municipal level to be able to facilitate transition and the coherence with all of the different planning documents and other roadmaps that are being used in different levels of government. Our orientation in one aims to facilitate companies' transition to a circular economy to act as the priority sectoral value chains that we have identified, namely the biofood, construction, textiles, plastics, and mobility logistics sectors. We always also want to aim to prioritize some of these strategies which are promising for the Montreal economy, but require more support to be implemented or deployed on a larger scale. And we also want to be able to shine a light on our best practices. This consultation helped us to mobilize the ecosystem and get to work alongside with us to accelerate the deployment of the circular economy. There's been more than 100 research studies done by companies, support organizations, and research sector. And so that helped us get a broad development around the roadmap's intervention framework. And the process has resulted in 18 high-level recommendations. So as I was mentioning at the beginning of the presentation, our process towards circularity, we have numerous parallel actions going on. We didn't wait for a roadmap to be taking action. We already have an industrial synergy Montreal, which is a team assisting companies in redefining their business models to help them adopt and integrate circular economy strategies. We've already helped more than 2,000 companies by analyzing potential synergies and realizing more than 200 of them. We are also working on circular economy networks in collaboration with Quebec to create Canada's first circular economy fund. We also have a number of programs. However, for the next steps, we had a roadmap project, but this will be adopted in the next weeks. Montreal also aims to have a first indicator of circularity for the metropolis. We will be the first city to get a which will be available in the month of May. And if you're interested, we will hold a presentation at the World Circular Economy Forum, and on Thursday you can participate. And the next big step will be to implement all of these beautiful goals in a plan of action, and that is where we're at now. So thank you, Madame Beauchesne, for this intervention. I will now hand it over to Mr. Charles-Éric Bernier from Communauté Métropolitaine de Montréal. Thank you. So the first question we can ask is, what is the Metropolitan City of Montreal? It's a municipal planning organization grouping 28 municipalities here in Quebec, Jacques-Cartier, Beaupré, d'Orléans, Lévis, etc. We have skills in matters of waste management, territory management, and economic development. So we started thinking about circular economy maybe a year and a half ago. We have been undertaking a process for public consultations, which has led to the management plan of waste residual materials, which was recently adopted. And the public presentation, what was heard a lot in the organizations and across the sector and partners is circular economy. This was on everybody's lips. And so in the second version, the PRGR, we have integrated this challenge by undertaking a circular economy strategy on the entirety of the territory. This strategy was supposed to be implemented slowly but surely, starting on 2024, all through 2025, sorry. But we have to admit that in the last year, we've had some conversations with partners. Other initiatives were taking off. Communities of practice and different projects were being kickstarted. And so we decided to go forward with a circular economy strategy. In parallel, we also had discussions with the Zone Économique Métropolitaine, so different regional partners have had the occasion to unite and use an action plan for in order to implement the strategy together with different stakeholders. And so we couldn't propose a strategy, but how can we go into it? There are already initiatives taking place in Quebec. It's pretty interesting to see. The first step would be to meet with stakeholders in the sector. We took our little bag and we went to meet with different partners because as we have mentioned it before, consultation and coordination is about building trust, and that's what is our main tool if we want to go as a community, as partners. And so trying to build relationships of trust, the best way to do that is to go meet people, ask some questions, see what are their interests, what initiatives are they already doing, and how do they wish to do things, but also what are they seeing as challenges and activities, whether in the daily or on long term. And so we went to meet with about 30 partners and stakeholders, the business groups and researchers, academics, name it, just to see what was already put in place. And what we heard is that it's really important to have a clear profile of where we're going. In order to know where we're going, we have to know where we're coming from. In the region, there was no such profile on the historicity of circular economy. Also, we had to start gathering this information and presenting it in a way that it can benefit collective intelligence so that everybody can familiarize themselves with what circular economy actually is, to have a baseline of understanding where we can all have the same notions around these concepts together as a group. And then it was a matter of implementing a government structure so that we could have partners around the table. And that's what we heard elsewhere also from experimented partners who advised us that we needed to have an active working group that is available to meet frequently across the upcoming weeks. And we also chose the strategy sometime along the months of autumn is as you can see, we want to move forward. We want to get going on this. There's a momentum happening right now. We don't want to miss out. And after, once this committee will be formed, once the profile will be advanced and, quite ready, then we'll be able to work on a common vision so that we may work with municipalities and businesses and the Council of Business of Quebec so that we can all agree on a strategy. So that would be the first part, really, of this big strategy. And then it would be to go into action and use roadmaps or action plans that may be a bit more specific than what we have right now. But for now, we're at the stage of still gathering some information. Thank you so much, Charles-Éric. Vincent Vézignan from hello? Apologies, your interpreter cannot hear. Before talking about the roadmap, I'd like to talk about the funding mechanism that is behind. It's a bit particular. We are in an administrative region. Apologies, the microphone is faulty. Apologies, there's a technical bug. We have a mic that's not working. We're always at the mercy of technology. You can see how it is. So that's why we need circular economies, isn't it? Maybe we can just switch mics in the meantime. Can you hear me? So that was a beautiful plan B. All right, we're sharing resources. So thank you. I think this is working. So I want to talk to you about our roadmap because we're a regional organization, this is a sector agreement. And so we have a new MRC and the Laurentian section that have gathered together in order to make a circular economy project together in partnership with financial partnership. So we have groups with different participating MRCs, and why that's important is because it's an overarching agreement with diverse interests and needs. There's one management plan for waste and residual material. And so we really have a big disparity in this ecosystem and different interests and needs. And so our partners have different interests and divergent interests than we do. Some of them are very local concerns, whereas other MRCs are considering issues relating to their neighbors as well. And so to us, this is a converging project taking time over 3 years. It was just published. We were supposed to start at the 1st of January 2023, but it's officially launched on the 15th of January 2024. So we overwent 1 year in this project. So there were 3 phases: the regional profile mapping that we have published, that will be published in a few weeks. I have my project manager at the back looking at me, and then we also have a roadmap and an action plan phase. And so we really want to get active to get results. This is really important for us. It's a funding mechanism in the process, and it helped us get a lot of mobilization in the region. We could meet with a lot of stakeholders and partners. We want to be at the intersection so that the message that we're sending is that we are between economic development and ecology. So we have to meet around the same table and think about how can we collaborate to take care of the environmental boundaries and limits. It's not our place to make that decision. We have to meet at that intersection together so that we can have projects that will be healthy and and that will be successful in the long term. This is a really strong strategy because everybody could agree that this was a regional priority. It comes with challenges, of course. In our case, we have 5 MRCs over 8 that are partnerships and that are partnering in this agreement. And so we have a regional vision, but we also have actors and partners that have specific desire for action. They can sometimes be very wary of differences and different needs across partnerships. But we do have this desire to have a structuring, impactful project, and I think this profile will be able to be published in the next couple of weeks. I can't think of any other word than the word sprint in order to come up with a roadmap. We are aiming to have it by the month of June so that we can have at least a year and a half to implement it and come back to the table and see how can we update it and continue together while mobilizing the neighboring regions and municipalities that are not yet into the agreement. So that would be a bit of a profile of the regional context in the Laurentian. I also want to mention that Synergie Montreal is an important partner with Synergie Laurentians. It's a similar organization where we are interacting with industrial actors. We are interacting with 100 or so organizations to bring them into greener practices such as composting, offering local services, etc. And so we're aiming at building a bit more detailed action plans in order to become a regional actor that is really active in bringing enterprises and businesses on the greener side. Thank you, Vincent. And thanks to our 4 panelists for these opening remarks. Let us now go to our roundtable for a Q&A session. For the next 30 minutes, we'll try to dig a bit deeper into the different parts of your roadmaps, according to your different perspectives and priorities, of course. Charles-Éric, I'd like to start with you, if you don't mind. You just told us about your process. Thank you for this presentation. And so the question we want to ask is, what are the first questions we should ask when we want to come up with the roadmap, and what are the obstacles or the solutions that we could identify? So what are the first urgent questions and how can we answer them when we want to start building a roadmap? Well, the first issue will be to question, where do partners where are stakeholders and where's the region at in terms of transition? The vision we have here in Quebec is that there are a lot of initiatives springing up, but these initiatives aren't necessarily collaborating amongst each other. And so what we want to see is how can we foster a bit more communication, a bit more collaboration in between initiatives. We also want to see how much are people willing to invest themselves, because a circular economy strategy needs to attract investment, it entails changing lifestyles, and so we also have to get a feeling to see if people are ready to make that step. We also need to identify whether people in general or partners more specifically, how much territory are they ready to invest in the circular economy project? Because we know we want to go at a certain rhythm. Does that rhythm correspond to the needs and limits to our local partners? We want to push the strategy forward pretty fast. I mean, we're talking about around 8 months. So when we say that, we have to keep in mind that those are tight datelines, and it also needs a bit more coordinating, a bit more organizing. So I think people are ready to get involved, but they need to be aware of the actual time this means that they will have to invest. There's a lot of things being done parallel to each other. And so we have to question, okay, how can I act the most efficiently? There's a lot of good things happening on this side and on that side. I did it that way, I did it this way. And so it's kind of a matter of seeing what's my own reality, what do I have time for, what can I delegate, and what can I come back to later. And so you have to identify how can you stay relevant so that you can help your community and your partners. And so it's about sharing information and making sure that the process is accessible to all. Thank you. That's really interesting. And it brings us to speak to Montreal's situation. Natasha, your project is well along as of now. And so the question I'd like to ask you is, what is the message, the lesson you can draw from this roadmap in circular economy? And so what advice would you give to other organizations or municipalities that are aiming at working towards circular economy roadmap? Well, the first advice I would give is to dare to start. I think a lot of people are getting cold feet because we want to reach perfection, but there's no smaller um, actions that don't help anything. I think every municipality, every territory, every town has to agree on starting and to get into the adventure. And so I think it's also important to have a strong leadership. We were able to count on a strong leadership on the municipal, administrative, and provincial level. And so I think that's important to have actionable relationships. That's really an essential part of success. We also have to work for healthy and fluid governments. It's important for us. We are delegating this to the Circular Committee for Economic Development. So they have this responsibility of making sure that the project is being implemented and that the government's structure is being clearly put into place. If we were talking about coordinating earlier, I think it's important to mobilize, but it's important that awareness raising is a continuous process. It's not a matter of launching a big campaign or holding a workshop at the start and then being like, okay, we're done, we can write up a report. If we really want to go forward and make it happen quickly, we have to mobilize a lot, and we have to make sure not to underestimate the importance of the internal mobilization. If we want to reach some changes, we have to see the entirety of the municipal services appropriating and familiarizing themselves with the circular economy concept so that we can have that way of working at the intern. It's also a matter of risk management and convergence, and not to just go into a planning phase without planning for upcoming action, because as we all know, coming up with action plans can be pretty long and hefty, but we are in a position where there's an emergency to start. I think there are actions we can already put into place. We also have several different needs and resources, whether human resources or money or budget. So we have to prioritize what are the sectors that will work on first. So it's a matter of being able to prioritize correctly. And then we also have to base ourselves on our natural skills so that we all have our natural qualities involved. In Montreal, there's social economy that's very strong on our territory. We also have academic research, AI, design. Those are strengths and skills that Montreal is very strong on, and we can count on those to kickstart circular economy strategies and plans. So those would be the advice. That would be the advice I would give. I feel like a big sister, but if you can help anybody who's starting their process, that's great. Thank you, Natasha. It's really interesting, I think, for everybody around the table. And now I'd like to go back to Vincent. You're right in the writing of your roadmap. Are you already able to identify a major concern or issue that you ran into the process, and what are the solutions that you took? Well, we had an important concern. So as I was saying, we have this context where we're working under pressure with a short timeline, and we were able to prioritize with our different stakeholders and municipalities, and we realized there's a qualitative quantitative equilibrium to reach. And so we were talking about mobilizing, making sure everybody felt called to act, making sure that we could get all of these opinions and feelings from the community and build that into the quantitative data. And so, yes, we went and did a survey, but we felt that it was really important to go and get opinion right at the company level. And that's pretty difficult because they're usually pretty busy. And so that turned us to CRITs, which helped us have access to better or other databases. And so we were able to go and get regional data for the Laurentians. The Chamber of Commerce of Montreal had already done a petition and survey across their members, so we could get that regional data. So we were able to go and get localized regional information. In terms of representation, of course, the sample wasn't always perfect. It was a challenge to meet, but we also were able to use older projects and older data that helped us to have a diversified and really rich portfolio. That's the approach we took. And I think there's a lot more data available than what we think. It's just a matter of collecting them and putting them together. This was our initiative, but it was transmitted to all of our partners. And so this was a reason for success. And the data that we were able to put together are relevant to our partners and community. But I think it's a matter of staying creative so that we don't repeat ourselves all the time. This is something our region is always coming up against, is are we repeating something that's already taken care of? Is something else very similar already happening? This is something we kept in mind throughout the whole process, and we're pretty proud of that because our conclusions allow us to go a bit further when we undergo that creation and action plan phase, when we're identifying challenges and future hiccups. Thank you, Vincent. That's really interesting, all of this conversation. And we all have our specific roadmaps. And so the question that might come to my mind is, how can we get all of those different roadmaps working together so that we don't work in silo? And so, Marley-Belle, I'd like to hear you on this next question. The RRECQ's roadmap involves the entirety of the Quebec society. How can we imagine potential mechanisms that would help make all of these roadmaps converge towards a similar path? This process was always open to everybody from the very start of the project. Intuitively, we could think about involving in this third phase of the process the possibility of implicating or involving experts and specialists to make sure that we are co-building the trajectory of the transition. If we have people from Laurentians, Montreal, Quebec region, all of these committees need to have different milestones, but they will find a path together for the entirety of Quebec society. Another thing I am seeing is another mechanism that this roadmaps project that are currently being built or that have just been published so that they can continuously be used by the academic research sector on circular economy so that we can continue building knowledge studies and notions that will help the entirety of the circular economy network so that we can have a common approach and common process. And last thing I think is really important is having open communication and continuous exchanges on all levels. It's not a unidirectional exchange. It needs to be a continuous, ongoing dialogue so that we have dialogue and communication across all of these different roadmaps. Super interesting. Thank you, Maribel. I think that's the goal of this meeting today, to at least start building connections and relationships amongst us. It's important to have wide regional representation and to have nuances in between different strategies and approaches in different roadmaps. And the next question I have, and this is a question to everybody, so Natasha, Marley-Belle, Charles-Éric, and Vincent, we're talking since the start of this conversation, and you have identified this, Vincent, the fact that we need to go reach information across different stakeholders, different needs and interests, but I'd like to hear you on that. How did you manage to do this, and how are you envisioning this process to involve all of your stakeholders? I'd like to start with Natasha. What about you? How have you done this part of involving your stakeholders? Well, as I was saying in my presentation, we really cared about involving all partners in co-constructing this roadmap from the start. When we started doing a profile of the situation, we had several committees reassembling, uniting partners from different sectors and domains, whether academic research, businesses, business owners. And this really came to a momentum in the public consultation on the roadmap on circular economies in Quebec. This consultation was useful because we already had done a pretty good temperature check the sector in the local sphere. So we could come up with some suggestions or proposals about priorities, and this consultation process really helped us confirm whether we were on the right path, if we were understanding things as they were. And this really opened up the dialogue with all of our stakeholders whom we had maybe not solicited directly yet. And so this really helped us consolidate all of the consulting process, whether internal or external. But as I was saying, this process is ongoing. We're still working on our report on circularity. We also have an expert committee with different ecosystems that can come in and chime in, tell us, okay, this makes sense. And I think we're going to go into a similar process in further steps. We're also going to have to involve stakeholders in the action plan phase so that everybody can have their own actions. We all have our own roles to play at the City of Montreal. We can act with bylaws, levies, commercial change and such. But then, policymakers, business owners, citizens, and governmental offices all have their own specific roles to play. And so that's what's going to have to be kept in mind while we implement our strategy, while we keep working with all our different partners. But it really has to be a co-constructed, continuous process, and the communications always have to stay open. I see several people in the room whom I have continuous conversations with, and so the goal really is to keep building better practices and dialogues as we keep going forward. As we were saying earlier, we don't really have the luxury of being able to double ourselves and clone ourselves and to do things twice or repeat the work. So we really have to work in complementarity and build together rather than alongside each other. Thank you, Natasha. It's a bit different in your side with the territorial regions. How were you able to tackle this challenge? I think the 3 first phases of the start in specific tours in each of the regions so that we understand what are the local interests, what is the specific issue for each of these communities. Another mechanism that can be useful is to have an operational committee. We had one at our organization. We had a committee with a representative of each economic chamber. And this committee helps us have regional mobilization. So we know there's a lever here where we have shared responsibility for this roadmap to go forward. So it's not Synergy's sole responsibility to keep this on their shoulder and push it forward. It's a shared responsibility with all of the regional stakeholders and partners. And so this agreement does reflect that. The other in terms of mobilization is we are right now thinking about how can we have theme days and workshops. Last day we had an activity where we had about 70 people from the Durée Emploi sector, so we municipalities, regional representatives, organizations, resource centers, all of these participants around the same table. And actually there were several tables because we were a lot of us, and we tried to really get everybody brainstorming on projects, ideas, solutions coming straight from the ground. And same thing with tourism sector. I'm meeting with the industry leader tomorrow, and then we're going to go into targeting specific business networks. And so, we're following with our partners strategies and communications. We really want to uphold and empower our regional organizations. We are really mandated to coordinate these activities, and that's the standpoint we've been using since the start of the project. These are not our projects at Synergy. Those are the Laurentians regional projects, and that's how we are engaging in mobilization. Thank you, Eric. I think you have already started brainstorming how to approach different partners and stakeholders. How is it going on your side? I mean, it's going really well. 100% of the people want to join. And from this, we started building a list where we identified around 15 partners that we wanted to meet with. but then you meet one person and she makes you think of this other thing they did, and so you add it into your plan. And then, from one step to the other, after 10 meetings, you have like more than 10 new members or partners, and so your starting list of 15 people, now it grew to 30. So that's really positive. It does asks a lot of energy, a lot of resources. It's pretty hefty work. We have to adapt as we go because the government, takes into one step, and then you have to provide data, you have to talk about the strategy, and it's always moving. So it is a matter of investing enough time being aware of the changing rounds. Another strategy that is often pretty useful is we work with working groups, with leaders and people who are well placed in their sectors. And so because as individuals, we can't work with 400, 500 people at a group. We work with organizations that already work with their own organizations and are aware of their own realities, and that they can represent and bring some information, confirm or infirm some our strategies. But it's also a nice way to have our strategies and activities be known across a wide sector. We also have to think about the Metropolitan Council. We have to have elected members that are inspired, that are motivated to act, that are invested in circular economy ideas, and know that it has to have quick results and have to be put in place pretty quickly from all parts and partners. And so this is a lot of work and resources that have to be mobilized, but we do hear positive feedback. Marlibel, I think there are different obstacles and difficulties in the academic research sector. Shortly, how has it been to get partners involved in this for you? Yes, integrating stakeholders was different in this project at every phase, but at the first phase, we identified a certain amount of specialists about circular economy. We wanted to talk about them, talk about recession and inclusion with them, and so we got a first diagnosis, concrete opinion with them. In the second phase, we also used communication channels of RRECQ and other organizations that brought a lot of support so that we could invite civil society members to different activities of the research process. We succeeded in obtaining the participation of around 250 people across Quebec. And in this third phase, we invited some specialists and experts to discuss different themes that will be presented in the collective vision that we had already been able to identify. 50 of them have given us positive answers, and so we will be able to talk about different regional committees, to talk about production, culture, and government. And those are the elements that are interesting people in this circular economy conversation. Thank you. And so we had several different interesting insights and backgrounds. Next question is, okay, how can we implement this roadmap, and what are the mechanisms that we can put in place to make sure that it goes smoothly? I'd like to ask Emmanuel first. We haven't heard a lot from you so far, so can we ask that question to you? I hope it's okay for a translation. I don't have any microphone. So implementing this network is a hefty duty. We are a limited funding organization, so we are aiming for 2026, and our goal was to tackle 2050. So there's a 30-year gap to bridge there. So this is an important concern. But what we are trying to do is, as Marlibel was saying, was to engage our partners and stakeholders so that in 20, 15 years from now, if network doesn't exist, some of these themes and conversations can still take place in the municipalities and regional groups and different citizens, because we have a roadmap, as Marley was saying, that's a lot less targeted, because we are a research organization. So we have a more of a theoretical, conceptual approach to circular economy, and our goal really is to mobilize and raise awareness, so that we can build skill in the academic research sector, in the expertise or scientific knowledge or quasi-scientific knowledge that is coming from research, so that we can instill inspiration and sometimes even emerging trends that can sometimes feel a bit strange, but that do reflect collective interests coming from populations that are seldomly surveyed or researched or studied. And so the FISL's approach is really complementary to the modeling approaches that are usually put into place by limited expert groups from very limited data. And so because we have different modelization types, we can have a broader synthesis, a broader summary. And so we're crunching data, both qualitative and quantitative data, starting from this bunch of work. So we're a bit between Margaret Atwood and Tupke, so that we can talk about the Canadian energy sector in a closed circular economy circuit. And so it is really all about modelizing. It's a matter of imagination, but also discipline and rigor. Thank you, Emmanuel. Are there any other comments to add to the implementation of those roadmaps and the mechanisms that are being suggested to ensure that these roadmaps can stay relevant in the next years? Natasha, are there things that you were able to implement to help your roadmap be successful into the future? Our roadmap is for 2024, 2030. We are going to have action plans that will have several milestones in those upcoming years. And so we're going to have mechanisms to be able to monitor the different indicators of success, so that every action plan will be held in a 3-year delay, including mechanisms for controlling and surveilling and for ensuring a monitoring of the resulting data. About implementation, we try to do this in different municipal projects and initiatives. There's an upcoming urbanism and mobility plan in Montreal coming up for 2050. And so we're going to see what the final plan looks like. But for now, we integrated circular economy in the context of these municipal activities that are planned in the longer term, so that we can make sure that we take into account all of these different principles as we develop our cities. And so it's really a matter of integrating into the other municipal action plans that maybe aim at the longer period and have more generic objectives, so that we can get in there and make sure that it is going smoothly and goes closer to circularity. And so we also have to keep an eye on delays and timelines to make sure that we get results in the time in the future. All right, so we're almost up to the end of our hour, so I want to use the last minutes we have together to ask one last question, which is, what is your biggest wish, your greatest hope about the process you're engaged in right now for circularity? Well, my biggest hope would be to see a circular economy adopted by the Council of Commerce. But also regarding this question of how to make it a long-term goal of what I say is happening, whether other organizations, whether funding or government or community groups, just making sure you have funding and stakeholders around the same table, it doesn't guarantee, obviously, that the money will be streaming into implementation, for example, but it does allow us to raise awareness and inform, and then it's easier when it's time to implement. And so having a strategy in place for the local region of Quebec, for example, that would be enthusiastically held by the local person, that the local population really believes in. I think that would be the ideal step, and that's really what I'm hoping to see. Thank you. Myself? Yeah, I also really want to see this process be successful in the long term. Uh, we are taking leadership as an organization. It's a decentralized initiative, but we are holding this position as leaders so that we can push the municipalities to engage and commit to this strategy. We have a year and a half left to find an equilibrium between having a roadmap and having structuring concrete on the ground projects. Those are structural fundamental changes that we need to bring, but we also have to have shorter term effects so that we can prove how investing in circular economies is actually very profitable. But I also think that the rhythm we are holding right now will get us to renew these agreements and go get new partnerships in order to have 8 regions for 8, so that we can put some energy back into this process. So we have to reach that balance between action and planning, and we have to always adapt, always keeping in mind that we have a year and a half left. So yeah, that's a huge challenge. We hope you make it, Natasha. On the shorter term, we hope to recruit all of the municipal offices and colleagues, the public function, to the roadmap that we will suggest in the context of the actual plan, so that everybody can really get onto it. We also want to make sure that the community sector and organizations are involved. We are lucky in Montreal. We have a very active base, very enthusiastic into circular economy. But lastly, I think we have to aim for a social movement and draw away from the leadership of a few individuals. It really has to be democratized in the entirety of the activity, so that we can have a systemic economic change. That would be really where I can go to retirement and feel happy. Marley Bell and Emmanuel. Thank you. My answer will be very similar to the last one. I think of 2 words, which is long-term and vision. I think my biggest hope is that once we are done with the roadmap, all of the stakeholders that will have been invited to act along the way have the will, the energy, and the capacity to put into place and implement a global strategy for circular economy across Quebec. To add 2 other words, just to piggyback on what Natasha and Marley Bell were just saying, imagination. We are facing unprecedented challenges. We can very easily get eco-anxious, and I think we need to know that circular economy is also feeding into circular society. And so it's not just one plan in one dimension, it's one of the projects that can possibly have a healthy impact on the entirety of society, and to create cohesion by creating an imaginary that can go further than these dark, heavy clouds that are so typical of our daily news report. So yeah, that's what I think. Thank you, Emmanuel. I think this leads us to the end of this panel today. Thank you so much, everybody, for being amongst us. I hope this exchange was relevant and stimulating for everybody, whether you were with us in person or online. For those of you who would like to continue talking with us, our panelists will stay with us for a few more minutes. You can also reach out to them to continue the conversation. You are highly encouraged to do that. For those of you who are online, we will now introduce a session for the WCEF to think about the future. This is an initiative that took place earlier on today in Brussels, and then we will have a dinner cocktail, so you are most welcome to stay with us. So please stay aware of the upcoming activities at rcceq.ca. Thank you again to all of our speakers for being here. Thank you, Marie-Belle, Emmanuel, Natasha, Vincent, and Charles-Éric. It was great to have you with us. Thank you.